Okay, we're rolling.
This is a home interview in Clifton Springs, New York with Charles J. Hill. The 25th of September 2003, approximately 3 p.m. The interviewers are Mike Russert and Wayne Clark. Could you tell me your full name, date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Charles J. Hill, Wisconsin, Fond du Lac County, Wisconsin, 1920.
Okay. What was your educational background prior to entering military service?
I have a degree in biochemistry from University of Wisconsin.
Okay, so you graduated from college prior to?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember where you were and your reaction when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
Yes, I was coming out of church, and the news hit Wisconsin around noon on that day or the next day, and of course nobody could believe it all at first, and then we all wondered what was going to happen. But the university had a big meeting the other day, and properly and orderly said we're just going to go on with our business as we should. The campus did change a lot very quickly. They took in hundreds of trainees for radio training and well, not radar. Radar was too new then, but medical. And the campus had flocks and flocks of young enlisted men, sailors, and Army men taking special courses.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Did you enlist or were you drafted?
I enlisted because the draft board was breathing down my neck, right? And I decided on the Navy.
Why did you pick the Navy?
Probably no good. Well, I had an uncle in it. He was a ranking officer. Coming from Wisconsin, I think the Navy looked better than being a private in the Army, right?
Yep. Okay.
So I spent they gave me some medical training, and I spent a year, first year, as a medical corpsman, petty officer, in working out of the Brooklyn Naval Hospital. So it gave me a chance to learn something about the military and a chance to see New York City when it was still unchanged. Then about a year later, they gave me a commission, a line commission, sent me to Princeton University for 3 months, I believe, in a very intense course and very well done in naval law, gunnery, navigation. I still have some books on that, maybe. Just I'm going to turn that off a second.
At Princeton.
3 months.
Mm-hmm. And so this was basically was it like an officer candidate school?
Yes. Yeah. Well, we were commissioned when we went there.
Oh, okay.
And then we were. Everybody was assigned. Many of them were assigned to the merchant fleet in the armed guard, where they had one naval officer. I was sent to California to train for the Amphibius, and so I spent a few months there on Amphibius training. Then I shipped out of Portland, Oregon on an APA. I don't know if you know what that is. Yeah, we had 26 landing craft, and we had 5. We had, I think, 4 dual mounts 40 millimeter and 1 quad mount 40 millimeter. We had 10 over here.
Now, what kind of landing craft did you have on?
We had 24 LCVPs. That's the, you know what that is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we had 2 LCMs. We had 26 landing craft.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody knew what they were doing to start with. The first day we put in the boats, all landlubbers, non-talented sailors that we were, took us all day to put in the boats empty and take them out again without any troops, or we had the wrong cables on. And
Now, how did you unload these landing craft?
From the ship, you mean?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Half of them were on davits. You know what a david
Yes,
is?
right.
There'd be three boats at a david station, or two. One would drop down, then you pick up the other, and the others were stacked up on the lower decks and picked up with cranes. That isn't the right word, but and lowered in. And we drilled and drilled and drilled. We were never matched for the speed of getting. We eventually got it where we could get all 26 amphibious craft into the water, loaded with Marines and jeeps and guns in 13 minutes. We were never
Wow.
tied and dispatched from the ship. So we were proud of that. I was first division officer, so I had half of the ship, which is 460 foot length ship. I had half of the ship to maintain and the crew on the deck division, which is separate from the engineering and the medical, that's it. So and I was a boat officer, so during an invasion I went with, I'd have a landing wave under me and take it in. The Navy was well organized and had this sense of satisfaction. A lot of the men, maybe you were stationed in Kansas in a warehouse or something, didn't have enough to do, you know. We had to work, I'll say that. We worked long hours, 7 days a week, and our time wasn't a happy time, but it wasn't wasted. Thank goodness for that, right?
So, how long did it take you to learn to get them off this fast? If it took you the first day,
Took us all day
to
without loading.
load the first
Of course,
day.
we didn't know what we were doing.
Uh-huh.
Fortunately, scattered through the ship were some old Navy men, petty officers, who were damn good at their job. When they got ashore, they were they usually got drunk and got in trouble, but they knew what they were doing. So we had that group to help us learn, and it probably took us 2 months before we could do it well, right? And so we practiced off Maui for a month. The invasion of Iwo Jima, we practiced off Maui, loading our boats and taking the Marines back, and went over that many, many times. And there was utter confusion the first time we went. Boats landed on the wrong beaches, you know, and crossed in front of each other. It was mass confusion, but we got it straightened out.
Now, was your first action was in the Philippines or Iwo Jima?
We were in the Philippine campaign, right. I didn't land on the initial landings, but we were in there early and to several of the bases there with supplies and troops. So I spent maybe a month or 6 weeks in the early part of the Philippine campaign. The next main campaign was Iwo Jima. We picked up the 5th Marines and took them up there. And Marines are a well-run outfit. They got to be the best in the world. I'm not a Marine. Maybe I'm glad I wasn't there. They know what they're doing. The men work. They keep track of their equipment. They know it. They're very well organized.
Now, were you under fire when you did the landings in the Philippines?
No, I was not. And
No, I noticed from what you said here, you took the first cavalry into the Philippines.
but we were not. The invasion had already.
Yes, but you went into in later.
We went in maybe a couple weeks later on with troops and supplies, right?
Now, with Iwo Jima, did you go have the first wave, or
I was there in the first wave, the first morning, right? I took in.
Now, did you yourself go in?
Yes, I took in my 16 landing craft, brought out 9. Under heavy mortar and machine gun fire. I felt very sorry for the poor Marines who had to stay there. It was utter confusion. The Japs had complete control of the beach with mortar and howitzer fire and machine gun fire. And then they'd run back to the ship and get ammunition and feed back to the beach and bring back the wounded. So we had, every night we went to sea and with smoke generators so the Japs trying to keep the kamikazes from finding us. I had a half an hour on that beach at Iwo Jima, which seemed like a week. But I didn't have to stay there.
Did your boat suffer any damage at all?
Not my boat, no. We couldn't get the ramp up again, but that was the sands at Iwo Jima are lava sands, and they're almost floating seawater. So they swept into the boat. We couldn't get the ramp back up, but we patched it up with some rags and got a pump going, so we didn't sink. But Iwo Jima was short time-wise, but it was. But probably the biggest negative at sea in wartime for me, was lack of sleep and lack of privacy. I had grown up on a rural Wisconsin I spent more time with horses and with people, private time and own bedroom all at once. I was crowded into close quarters and watches every night, an hour before sunrise every day, even if you had the 12 to 4 watch on deck all day. We had to work. We really had to work.
How many in a crew of LCVP?
4. There'd be a coxswain and a engineer, that's a mechanic, and 2 ramp men. I was trying to think of the name. But the Navy did some very smart piece of engineering, and back of every operation is some planning of supplier engineering that is never known, that was brilliant. The Navy settled on one type of engine, the Gray Marine diesel 6-cylinder. So everybody learned that engine, and mechanics really learned it. Who were specially trained. Even I had to take training in it. So rather than have 20 different kinds of engines all over the Pacific, they had for one engine for every ship up to a very good size. The smallest ones were run with one of those, 225 horsepower. Our LCMs had 2 in. The next size ship had 3 of them in. The next size ship had 4 of them in, all geared into one shaft. So they had, for this engine, which covered 80% or 90% by number of the ships and boats, had one engine, same spare parts anywhere, and mechanics were trained for any ship, which is a great piece, yeah.
How many on a crew of an LCM?
I think there was 5. They had a 50 caliber machine gun on her, so they had a gunner.
Now, how many trips do you think your boats made back and forth at Iwo Jima? Well, how long were you there?
We were there 5 days, I believe. Maybe a dozen, I don't remember.
Mm-hmm.
We were. I don't know. We were back. We were running in ammunition and rations and bringing back wounded all day and all night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the battleships hung in there, blasting away, and the destroyers, and the Japs sunk a carrier there one day. What's the word I want? Not the big carrier. The
Escort carriers?
escort carrier. So we picked up the survivors from that, and so our sleeping quarters were double crowded. Guys, officers and men sleeping on the deck, and of course the hospital, the doctors were ultra busy. They just never got to bed for a week with the trying to keep guys alive. And we had one night we buried 4 in the dark in the rain over the side. Pretty dreary. Yeah. The Navy was well managed, I felt.
You know, after Okinawa or Iwo Jima, you went into Okinawa. How long was it? Did you go back to do some training?
No, we
Or you
went
just-
we went south to Espirito Santo,
Mm-hmm.
and picked up the New York 27th Division, and landed on Easter morning at Okinawa, which was by that time the invasions the landings were not so bloody. The Japs had learned it as Rommel learned in Europe. You have no chance within 10 or 12 miles of a battleship. So they made very weak attempts, almost no attempt to defend the beach at Okinawa.
Mm-hmm.
Went in very easily. And they set up their defense line on the mountainsides about 10 or 12 miles inland, which was the smart way to go, right?
Mm-hmm. Now, you said you lost 9 craft at Iwo Jima. Were they replaced by the time?
Well, some of them straggled back in a day or two and got repaired,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all I remember.
Mm-hmm. So the landings at Okinawa were much easier because of...
The landings were very easy,
Mhm.
but Iwo Jima, for me, my role, was hell for 30 or 40 minutes. Absolute hell. But Okinawa, I was there maybe 10 days. That was far worse for us because of the suicide planes.
Mhm.
And got almost no sleep. They came in every night, and I've often thought, if I could have a 3-dimensional picture in sound of when Japanese suicide planes come in at night with 100 ships, each shooting 10 anti-aircraft guns, tracer fire. You never saw or heard anything like it. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. But that was awful because every night, every third night I had to do ride a smoke boat all night and wear a radio and carry grenades and a handgun for Japanese swimmer infiltrators. And then their ship would radio me to make smoke when the Japs came in, the planes. And you'd get lost out there in your own smoke on the open sea. And the ship would be swearing at you because they couldn't, the smoke wasn't covering their ship and you couldn't see the ship. And everybody was mad.
What did you have on board? How did you make the smoke?
They had fantastic generators. Maybe a four piston motor, and I don't know how they atomized this oil, but it made smoke. You could cover this town. You couldn't see Clifton Springs if two of those generators opened up. And but they say you could get lost out there in the open sea in the smoke till the Japs cleared out and the smoke cleared out. You know.
Was your ship ever under direct kamikaze attack, or?
You don't know. When they come in, I was scared a few times. I was only frightened once when I thought this kamikaze was headed for me, which is ridiculous. It was my fright lasted maybe 5 seconds. I had to run, but I had no place to run, and I got my senses together. So, of course, there were a lot of ships, so he was heading for my ship, and I don't know what happened. He didn't reach us anyway.
He was shot down?
Probably, yeah, most of them were. We didn't shoot him down. We did some shooting, but with 100 ships, they're all shooting. You don't know. You can't measure what's going on very well. In the smoke, generally, smoke and fogs, and but my duty in the Pacific was late in the war, and I had a great appreciation of those Navy people who were there early in the war. I was there when we were the strength, and the ones who were there early in the war were not the strength. They went through hell.
Were you in Okinawa vicinity for the typhoon?
Yes.
Great typhoon?
By that time, the Navy had learned you can lose more ships in a typhoon than you can in a battle. And they had good weather forecasting by that time. So if a typhoon came in, we were dispatched in whatever direction took us out of the heart of it. But we got some very rough seas. And I remember one thing I'm proud of. I was qualified early as a D. That meant I could stand full bridge watch command on any ship in the Navy. So I was standing the main watch one night from midnight to 4 in the morning, and when we were trying to escape this typhoon. Our ship, our bridge level was 70 foot above water level in calm seas, and I couldn't see over the next wave each time because the waves were 40 or 50 feet, and we were rolling so far, and I got scared, frankly. So I sent the messenger. I said, "Would you have the captain come to the bridge?" So he brought the captain up. He came up in his pajamas. I didn't tell him I was scared. I just said, "I want you to know the conditions and what I'm doing," hoping he'd believe me and take over. He says, "Young man, keep her headed into the wind and pray you don't lose your power." And he went back to bed. He was an old Annapolis officer. Yeah. So I finished off the night watch. But I ended up one of the first ships into well, when the Japs surrendered on August 15th or 16th, when they announced it, nobody knew if it was true or not. The Japs were bad animals in those days. I mean, they were awful people.
Now, where were you, and what was your reaction when you heard about the dropping the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki?
I don't remember where we were, but I do remember that we were thrilled because this would shorten the war. I do remember when it was announced, we were rehearsing with the Army, I believe, the invasion of mainland Japan. When the August 15th announcement was made, we believed that Japan is surrendering. It was 6 in the morning and we were running a landing practice with the troops, and the captain announced on the speaker that just heard that the Japs have surrendered. Continue with the drill, he said. That was it. Because then when we did get up there, we were one of the first ships in. We were anchored near the Big Mole when the treaty was signed, and just before 10 or 15 minutes before the treaty was signed, they sent over 1,000 B-29s at elevation of 500 feet. You cannot imagine that roar. And they were bomb loaded because at that, I said, we didn't know if the Japs were kidding or not. Yeah. No, we were given an award for being one of the first in there and the first to get our.
What troops did you have on board? Did you have troops on board?
But they were Army, but I don't remember what they were. After we were there a few days unloading, and then the Commodore said we'd done an outstanding job, our ship, and we should allow the crew to have a few beers, which meant going ashore. We carried beer, but you couldn't have it on. So I was assigned to take the third of our crew ashore with a lot of beer and onto a little uninhabited island in the bay there somewhere. And so after I got, and I had 2 shore patrol enlisted men with me. And so after we got the troops settled on the beach, the crew settled on the beach and the beer distributed, we had a couple hours to waste. So I said, I'm going for a walk. And I walked over the little hill that was on this island, and there on the other side of the island was a village, a little fishing village. So I said to these 2 shore patrol guys, I said, we're going to take this village. And I said, so stand up straight and look real serious and mean. We walked in the main street of this little village, and all the men came out and bowed over. They hid all the women and children. One guy held up a book. He says, I speak English. You here to take village? I said, yes. And I said, I want to tour the village. Show me what's going on here. So we tried not to laugh all the time. And so he showed us the school and the town hall and everything. One that we could do for us. Then I said to the guy, now I had him doing standing up straight and military march. And we turned around, walked on, walked back. Oh, they never saw us again. Okay.
So how long were you in Japan?
Maybe a week. I went ashore one night, which I shouldn't have done, in Yokohama. I and one of the doctors went for a walk, which was forbidden. The streets were, there was no lighting, all the buildings were bombed out. We wandered through a few offices and we shouldn't have done it. It was stupid. But, yeah, glad to get off the ship once in a while. Yeah. We had a great medical corps on our ship. Fabulous doctors, and we turned into a hospital ship after an invasion almost. Yeah. Yeah. But I was married, had two boys in home, one I'd never seen, so I was very anxious.
So you married before you went into service?
Yes, I was married when I graduated from college. Married a gal who graduated with me. So my whole goal was to get home. They wanted me to stay in, and I'd have done well if I had stayed in, because I'd had the rank and experience early. And but you can't. I wanted to get home, and I went home as soon as I could and told them that I didn't want you to have my address or my telephone number. Just forget I ever existed. That was a dumb thing, but yeah, I wanted to get home.
So you were discharged in March of '46. Where were you discharged?
Into northern Wisconsin. I took the train from San Francisco to Chicago, and there was one train a day that went to northern Wisconsin. It was 2 passenger cars hooked onto the end of a freight train, and I got to Chicago a couple hours late, and I missed that train by about 3 minutes. And I thought I'd missed the whole world. I watched that pull out, and I had to wait another day to get the next train. And when I got there was no depot, and they let me off on a snowbank on a little country road up in northern Wisconsin. So I walked about a quarter of a mile through 3 foot of snow, and there my wife was waiting for me at a little country store. Yeah. Okay.
Did you ever make use of the GI Bill?
No, I didn't. I never got any benefits. I'm not. In fact, I don't know if you want any politics in this. I felt that United States veterans organizations were too hungry with the federal treasury for 30 or 40 years. No, I never took anything.
You never took the 5220 club?
No, I never took anything. I just wanted. They paid me while I was there, and they took care of me, and they didn't owe me anything.
Do you remember
Excuse me.
while you were in service, hearing about President Roosevelt's death? You remember reaction to that?
I sure do. And you want to shut that
No,
off.
that's all right. Unless you prefer. It's up to you.
Maybe you better turn it off, and then you can.
Okay. All right.
So we couldn't talk politics rationally at all. We still can't, but I see them once in a while.
Did you ever join any veterans organizations?
I joined briefly. I lived in Geneva for a few years. I joined the VFW, but it was a membership only. I never was active in any of them. I did. I made quite a few contributions to the American Legion post in Ontario, New York. I had some of the newspaper editions on Pearl Harbor Day, and I had some on VJ Day. And so I gave them, what else? I gave them, I had a chart here I was going to show you. I can't find it. I guess I gave it to my daughter. One of my navigation charts.
This map you gave us.
That's where our ship was, right?
Do you want to hold that up and I'll zoom in on it? All the different places you've been to. You want to just.
Now, obviously, you already kind of said this, but you stayed in contact with some that you were in service
Yes, we
with?
could- I go to New York almost every year for my one friend. He and his wife are born and bred Manhattan Jewish people. They live in 200 Madison Avenue. That's their whole world, with totally different world from a farmer from Wisconsin, right? But we're very close friends. And then my other close friend is in California, in Ventura. I could see him probably every other year. And I don't have any closer friends than those two people, right? Yeah. Here's a quickie on where we sailed originally out of Portland, Maine. We did some invasion practicing in Hawaii. Then then we went to the Philippines, then the invasion of Iwo Jima, then down to New Hebrides and picked up the New York 27th Division for the invasion of Okinawa. I don't remember what happened between there and Iwo Jima, and the peace signing at Tokyo.
Okay.
I said the Navy was well organized. We had to keep learning. We had to when we had any spare time, we had to learn more about the ship's engineering and its gunnery and its navigation. And some days I had to be the navigator for the day and shoot all the stars and the suns. And it takes about 3 hours to figure out where you are. If you do a good job, you come within a mile of where you actually are. Today they punch a button, they know where they are within 5 feet. So,
Okay. Well, how would you say? You have somewhat told us this, but how would you say that your time in the service changed or altered your life?
one, it broadened me tremendously with social, not happy social, but
yes.
American sociology, which was not as melded as it is today, of course. World War I broke up a lot of the sectionalization. Well, the Civil War did too, but each war is brought up. Today, it's be harder for a young person today to understand that, because we didn't travel in those days. I hope someday to get to Chicago. You know, that was just so, and it brought me into contact with different quality, responsible people. I learned a new profession, which is always usable no matter where you go. Just organization and discipline, which are well done in the Navy, and that's a tool anywhere. I don't know what. Give me some more questions if
Well,
I haven't covered that too.
I think that's.
Yeah, I learned a new profession, and it's never a loss.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.